This meeting is
being recorded. Good evening, everyone. Lovely to see you all again for this very hot June day. This whole week has been
no fire.
Sweltering. No fire again.
No fire.
I had a cold shower all week. I had one today, and I'm still sat there, and I'm thinking, God, I wish I was still in the cold shower.
It's like somebody flipped a switch, isn't it?
It is. It just seems to have gone from like 2 jumpers and a coat to like a jumper and a coat, and now suddenly it's like t-shirt and shorts weather within a matter of 10 days.
Is. Even first thing in the morning, it's warm.
I don't even wear a jumper to work anymore. It's lovely.
You wear a car, don't you?
Well, I drive a car to work.
Yeah.
But we're off track.
We're off track again.
We make a constant habit of this. Anyway, yes. Observations.
So, yes, it's funny. Do you remember back when we did the All Marshes walk and we talked about skylarks? And we talked about how I've been trying for 2-3 weeks to get some decent footage of skylarks. And even though there's loads of skylarks where we are at the back of the house and in the fields, and I couldn't get anything worth recording. And then we went out to All Marshes and nature gave us the gift. We've got amazing footage of skylarks, which was unreal, just absolutely superb. We saw one coming down, land on the ground. We saw a couple of males have a bit of a barney. We got some really good sound effects. It was fantastic. And nature has a habit of doing that again and again. I mean, last Friday was tipping down with rain, you may remember. I was really gutted in the first instance because I had to go to Maidstone and Thanet and Herne. I got a bit of a mystery tour and I was hoping I'd get the bike out. So I was a bit frustrated. But every time I got to a client's house or a place where I needed it to be dry, the rain stopped. And that was cool. You know, it's one of those. I'm absolutely convinced that if you give nature the option and you open up to what it can deliver, it will deliver in spades every time. Now, there's going to be a bit of a theme, 2 or 3 of these as we go through this evening's episode. And we hadn't got a plant or an animal for the week. And Ross had said yesterday, we need some butterflies. I've seen butterflies. I'll get some footage of butterflies. Didn't see a butterfly all afternoon.
Considering I'm in a garden at the moment working, which is filled with every plant under the sun you can think of. There's meadow. Anything you can think of that should be in a garden is in this garden I'm currently working in. And yesterday morning I saw not thousands, but so many different butterflies. And then in the afternoon they all just kind of went, oh, we must just leave them alone, go away for the day.
It is. It's like, I mean, one of the things I've put in the latest book is the Buzzard incident where it gave us a change of direction. I'm not going to go into that one now. But this morning, I'm walking back. I'm about 200 yards away from my front door. Still haven't got anything when all of a sudden I got stopped dead in my tracks as we were coming back. And this little video will tell you exactly which gift nature gave me this morning, which gave us the plant/animal of the week. And it really was a stop in your tracks moment. Now, it's a real shame we can't do smell-o-vision or scent-o-vision. Cop this. Standing in what has to be quintessentially an English sunken footpath, and almost the same as I did last year, I have got stopped in my tracks by the scent of honeysuckle. It's intoxicating, it's beautiful, it's natural, and it's nature saying, come on, look at me. I'm stood here. I'm inhabiting those quiet, shady places because it's pretty overgrown here. The sun only ever really comes through in dapples, which is one of the things that makes honeysuckle so unbelievably awesome. It grows where a lot of other plants won't. It's got a pretty pretty flowers, kind of just off white with a hint of almost orange to them. But the scent, oh, the scent. The fact that it catches you when you're not looking. This is a clear example of nature giving you gifts when you need them the most. This is so awesomely unreal. Honeysuckle. Go look for some. That honeysuckle is almost the perfect climber for, if you like, the south side of the garden, because the south side of the garden doesn't generally get that much sun, because obviously it's facing north, and honeysuckle doesn't demand light like so many other plants do. But I have to admit, when you get to somewhere that's still with a honeysuckle, and the scent is one of those, absolutely stops you in your tracks. It's like a kind of aromatic smack in the face, would you believe? But yeah, get out, get into those still places and find some honeysuckle. It's unbelievable. Wasn't expecting that this morning. I'd forgotten about last year. But it's amazing how scent can take you back to places. It's cool.
Well, talking of scent, how about a little bit of salty air scent as you're walking down towards All Marshes?
Towards All Marshes. I mean, scent, as in, yeah, scent back, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we've been requested as we asked everyone, and All Marshes has been top dog. It's the one everyone wants to see.
It is. I remember enjoying. I mean, it was a good day, that one.
It was one of those days when we left and the weather looked pants.
It did.
And we turned up and the weather was pants. And within half an hour, it's gone like almost like the weather has the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
It went from this strange, eerie, snowy kind of day.
We had all seasons. All 4 seasons in one day.
And then next thing you know, we're both wandering down the down the marshes, and we're deciding that it's time to take jumpers off because it's so warm.
But the only thing that was consistent though was we did have a lot of wind. There was a lot of wind.
Considerable amount of wind. But I think with All Marshes there is very rarely a time without any wind, I would imagine.
A bit like Dungeness, I expect.
I would think so.
Yes. So you either get blown to smithereens or you get burnt to a crisp.
Either one. Sounds like working outdoors.
It does a bit, doesn't it? So, should we show them the video?
I think we should.
We should indeed. Here we go. So what you can see here is the remains of the old Hearty ferry. It's the wooden timbers that I imagine were the supports for the drive-on, drive-off ferry that used to be here. And certainly I remember a conversation with my father, who used to play for Canterbury Rugby Club,
and they used to use the ferry on the way over to Sheppey to play rugby. So that would have been back in the 50s. Shortly after that, they built the first road bridge, which I can remember using, and then they built the new bridge, which is the main one for now, on the A249. But you can see nature's just taken this back over really quickly. A lot of the timbers are rotted, been washed away and gone. You can see the vegetation is now encroached on what's left. But it's quite, you can clearly see, obviously, what was there, and the road that we sat and had our lunch on and we walked up just now was the approach to the ferry. But it's kind of like, wow, gave me back some memories. And on the other side, there's actually a pub called the Hearty Ferry, and I remember a few years ago now actually having a meal in there with my mum and dad. It was very much kind of spit and sawdust, and I kind of like that. It's had a lot of money thrown at it now, and it's a very different place. But anyway, the Hearty Ferry, fantastic. Black-headed gulls, and they're quite an interesting bird, because if you actually see a gull with a black head looking like this, it's actually a Mediterranean gull. The head on these birds is actually a dark brown colour. So, and then that's only the summer plumage, because in the winter the heads go to white and you get a dark brown patch behind the eyes. The other way of telling what they are is generally by the bright red legs that they've got. But as you can see with these, they've been exploring the mud that well that their legs are actually covered in mud, which makes it a little trickier. But there you go, black-headed gulls. As you approach the jetty on the left, take a right turn and head back towards the car park. Thank you very much for watching.
Wow. Didn't we go to Gunpowder Park that morning?
We did. We went and filmed in Gunpowder Park in a bit of rain and a bit of sleet in the morning.
It was a bit grim, wasn't it? Kind of like
it was.
We were in two minds as to whether he can go out that day when we left.
It was yeah, because I'd only ever been to Gunpowder Park twice before. One of them I couldn't remember because I was such a wee nipper.
Actually, he was in a foul mood that day. It was my birthday. Not sure which one.
I was also still a wee nipper. These days, I don't involve myself in his birthday things. You can't have been that
wee a nipper because we were testing out the kettle we bought for the West Highland Way. So you had to have been at least 8 or 9.
Wee nipper, definitely.
Pain in the bum.
But no, then the second time I went with my mother a couple of years ago now, and that was a really hot day, and we ended up kind of sheltering in some of the old remains. To try and get out the sun for a couple of minutes.
No, the first time we went up to Raw Marshes afterwards. It was a birthday. The strange things that you remember though is that I remember Ross's nana giving us a box set of Rage Against the Machine CDs.
Good band.
So very good band. So I remember that. But we'd had a cuppa at All Marshes, and the Gunpowder Park. But we went up to All Marshes, and we just bought this little single camping stove because Ross must have been 89 because it was one of the first purchases we made.
I think it was rucksack, kettle, tent, and the hob.
Because the first time we went out camping with all the stuff we had, I mean, I pretty much had a caravan on my back. So we started lowering. Oh, the first day when we got to Canterbury, I was on my knees. Couldn't do it now.
I had the lunch and that was it.
But so we had this camping stove, and I was sitting out on the bench trying to sort this out. And Ross's mum was trying to keep the peace because he wanted to go home and do something and was kicking off. And of course, at that age, he had no sensor, no sort of like, it was just
projection. Projectile.
No one projectile. It was just projection, thankfully. But anyway, off task again. So, celebrating walks.
Yes. Well, I think all marshes is up there. I think for me, solely on the fact of what we experienced with the weather that day, and also seeing Highland cattle, as well as seeing everything else going on. I mean, we talked earlier about all the birds that we saw, and we also talked about the snow and everything. And it was just one of those days I don't think I'll ever forget, because it was just so British, almost. The weather does what it wants, when it wants, and however it likes. Because
horizontal snow.
Because that's just Britain. And I think it was just quite an entertaining day, because I have to admit, when we did go to film it, I really was not looking forward to going up on top of the ridge at All Marshes. If there was snow coming sideways and a heavy wind, it would have been chilly, but we were blessed to have the sun come out.
Let's crack on. Back to the first guided walk we ever did.
Rolling it back a little bit.
This was,
we can notice the technical changes as well as
January. I was very tempted to go back and do a bit of tweaking, but we've had a bit of fun and games with the editing software, trying to prep stuff for moving everything onto YouTube. By the way, thanks to Verbo for being extremely tolerant and patient with me yesterday and today.
Not many people are.
It was brilliant. So we'll just put that shout out there. So this is the very first one we did. This is part 3, and we were umming and ahhing as to which bit to pick, but we picked part 3 because, and I have to admit, we haven't actually gone back and checked them. There's definitely a green woodpecker in there.
Definitely Watershed.
Definitely Watershed. There might be the buzzard.
Oh, good question.
And there might be the fallen willow, but I can't remember where the cutoff was. So do you know what? It's going to be a bit of a mystery, but
welcome, all part of the service.
There you go. Anyway, we do have the most amazing members.
Big high contrast. And I think this is after the buzzards and the willow.
It's certainly before music, I think.
I think it's before a lot of things we did, or you learned with your software.
I'm learning all the time. Every catastrophe is an opportunity to learn something new.
Yes, okay.
Now, this part of the walk, you walk through the Watershed Park estate, and behind me you can see the manor house. Now, the manor house is still owned by the Earl of Guildford. It was actually bought by the first Earl of Guildford in the 18th century. Now, the house itself actually burst out in flames during 1913. It was then refurbished and turned into flats and is now owned by multiple people.
So, just after you reach the car park in the corner of Watershed Estate, and we take a left turn off the road towards the old kitchen gardens. 50 yards later, take another left turn and we're going to head back towards Aythorne.
Now, we're just about to leave the Watershed Estate. We're coming through the gate and we're just about to head back down to Aythorne. And you can see it just behind me. You get to this junction, don't take the path on the right, back into the main road, take the path forward and go back up towards the roundabout.
And the walk brings you back out into Aythorne, just by the roundabout, which is to your left. We really hope you've enjoyed this walk. If you want to go out on it and take the route with you, that would be fantastic. If you'd like to come back and tell us about it, either on a show or on the Simple Life Facebook page, that would be fantastic. We'll see you soon. That's Simon and Ross. Thank you.
Well, I believe that's not actually the one we were meant to show.
You know how we just said, every catastrophe is an opportunity to learn something new. Well, Ross has just said, I'll find the one we really want. You keep them going for a minute. And it kind of reminds me of a moment some of you may remember or know there is a band, bit of a prog band out there called Marillion.
Oh, there was a question about
And-
Marillion on Ken Bruce's Popmaster this morning on Radio 2. Yes, I listened to Radio 2, and yes, I am only 21.
Well, and anyway, it was the Happiness is the Road tour. Happiness is the Road. And it was in the times when, if you like, they were starting to record actual concerts and actually have them on a CD. So you could actually go at the gig, pay your money, and then at the end of the gig, they would basically, you have about a 20-minute wait, which is always a bit tense with the time of the trains. And you could actually leave with a CD of the gig that they were there that time. And they came to the end of whichever song it was. And H, singer, comes up to the microphone. And he's waffling away and getting a fair amount of abuse from several members of the crowd. And it turns out, he said, they've just told me, can you fill for a couple of minutes because they're changing the reels. Now, I don't think they've recorded much on reels for quite a while, but they said they were, turning the disc over and they just needed him to fill for a couple of minutes. And it kind of like had a bit of a similar feel to it. So I think we're almost there, and hopefully I've kind of blanked this almost well enough that Ross has just about done all the technical stuff, because Ross is the technical whiz, and
It's definitely not the fact that Dad can't see the screen from where we're sat. I promise
there's
you
an element of that to it, but I did manage to turn off all of the apps earlier and make sure that the right videos were open. Well, the plan was that the right video clips were open. We just hadn't picked the right ones. There's nothing that you're going to see. I mean, how seamless was that? I'm sure nobody's noticed that there was a bit of an error there at all.
We just watched a good 2 minutes of directions instead.
Yeah, we are seamless professionals, and we know how to get past. I mean, face it, no one knew that Trevor wasn't here the first week of the speakers, did they?
That's true. Well,
But
this is the part that we wanted to show you.
So here we go. This has got buzzards and green woodpeckers and a bit about trains, I think. Okay, so we're on the footpath from Shepherd's Well to Watershed. Behind me is a very big, mature hedgerow. Hedgerows originally were a means of separating land between different owners. That changed when we had the agricultural revolution in the 18th century. Nowadays, they're very, very valuable tracts of land for wildlife. Otherwise, we've got these big fields either side of us, which are kind of like a desert for so many of our wildlife. We've got nowhere to live, they've got no food. So they actually provide almost traffic ways across our countryside. And it's really important that we try and hang on to them, because otherwise we're just going to end up with these large deserts, and that kind of typical hedgerow bound English country landscape will be gone, and a lot of the wildlife will die out with it, which would be absolutely criminal. But you can actually tell roughly how old a hedgerow is by the number of species of shrubs and perennials that are in it. And there is one on the Bettshanger estate which has been dated back to Saxon times. So that's a hedgerow that's over 1,000 years old. Absolutely unreal. So when you see a hedgerow, just give a thought for everything that it represents, being English, for our wildlife, for our countryside, and for our history. How amazing is that?
Now, along the walk, you'll see all these raised areas. Now, these raised areas were used for a railway to take the coal from Tilmerston Coal Mine, or Tilmerston Colliery, along to Shepherd's Well, where it would then be transported to wherever it needed to be. Now, the trains had to be put on level ground. So they would raise the ground so it was level, because trains don't really like hills. Thank you. Come on then. Scruff, come on. just come through the kissing gate. There is livestock in the field, so again, dog leads, please use them. But this is also part of North Downs Way. And from here, you want to go through that gate, just over there.
So, you have to take our word for it, but on the top of that post is a big female buzzard. She just flew right across us, and it's typical with wildlife. We didn't have time to get our camera out before she was gone. But there you are, buzzards in the Kent countryside. Amazing.
So, just come along the walk, and we found this willow tree which has come down at some point during high winds. But the tree itself, the bark, is really solid, and it's rough, and in some places it's quite sharp. But you can see as well, we think this tree was probably hit by lightning at some point, because it's all burnt out on the inside, like someone's had a fire in it. And the root ball itself is really small for how big the tree actually is. And we don't actually know how it came down, but it's still brilliant to see something like this out in the wild. And we never knew this was here. We've just seen it on the walk. Cheers.
At the end of the field, you come to a road, turn right up to the crossroads. So, go over the road at the crossroads and you'll see a footpath sign on the left. Take that path through the small coppice and follow it all the way to the Watershed estate. Come on. Bruno, come on. Come on, you two. Can you see, centre screen on a post, there's a green woodpecker. Just flew in and just flew away. Notice that undulating flight, which is quite characteristic of birds that size and woodpeckers. There you go.
Wow. Do you know, I'm really glad I didn't play with it actually, because I remember at the time, it was the first time we'd gone out and done a walk, and I think we had something like 50 clips of video. It was the first time we'd done the kind of passing shots, which kind of felt a bit daft at the time, but we've got a bit better at those. I've also found the volume button so you can raise the volume on them.
But it's also recorded pre-camera, pre-microphone, pre-wind deflector muffle thing, down definition downgrade. That's the one I'm looking for.
Pre-music,
Pre-music,
pre-voiceover.
That's pre almost everything other than just chopping videos and putting them together. And I think it just shows. I mean, I looked at that now and I'm thinking, oh God, did we really think that was amazing? And I'm looking at it now and I'm thinking, God, we've come on miles. But that might just be favoritism from me. But
I think
might be quite biased.
Pat on the back, mate. Pat on the back. We've come a long way. We have.
Well, apparently the content was still great.
Well, there you go. See, we'll take that other pat on the back. We're not. That's it. Thank you. It's funny. If there was more of us, we could stand in a circle.
Yeah, all right. We're not quite Chinese whispers.
No, not quite Chinese whispers.
We've come on this journey with you. You have indeed.
Absolutely.
It's been entertaining.
Tell you, actually, we were talking about nature's gifts. We've got white throats in the path down behind, and every other year, we only get close enough to see that it's a white throat because they've got, funny enough, white throats. But you can hear them. They've got a really scratchy song. Do you know what? When they're ready, they will let me get close enough. They haven't done it yet. But,
Well, I mean, again, following on Nature's Gift, and the garden I'm working at the moment is over in Woodensborough, just outside Easter. And I mean, this place is filled, absolutely littered with plants, meadow, shrubs, bushes, hedges, trees, you name it, it's there, right? And every day this week, so that's 4 days, I have seen 4 buzzards, it may be the same one, reappearing, but that's 4, and they've all, I've been stood by a cement mixer, and I've just heard the call, and I've looked up, and every time it's been getting mobbed. Now, can anyone in the chat have a guess at what might have been mobbing it?
yeah. We might have featured something similar in some previous shows, maybe.
There's a fair few of them about. Lots of different breeds. Should we say, is that the right word? Species.
Yeah. Within that family group.
They're quite dark.
Yes.
Natured.
Bit kind of like the gull we just saw, but the colour that's in its name. Is that cryptic enough?
Well, I think everyone's stumped.
Stumped.
I could not tell you what it was. It definitely wasn't a raven, but it was a corvid. I would imagine it was probably rooks, because there are rooks nesting in the oak trees behind the property. But every day, it's been around lunchtime, I hear the call when I'm stood by a cement mixer. I'll turn the mixer off for lunch, and I'll just stand there for 5-10 minutes, and I'll watch this buzzard just fly around and around and around, not giving a monkeys. It's being swooped at left, right, and centre by, I think it's rooks, because there's 3 or 4 of them, and it just doesn't give a monkeys. It just keeps going higher and higher and higher in the sky, and then the rooks, I think, get to a point and go, nah, you're all right up there, and just come back down. And then about 20 minutes later, it will come back down, and they'll go, right, we're going to have you this time. And it goes, no, see you later. And it keeps doing this all the time, and eventually it thinks, oh, I've had my fun. But on top of that as well today...
Hang on, before you get... That's a bit like the World War II dogfights. Did you know, right, the Spitfire, saw one of those yesterday.
Me too.
I got distracted when I was at a client's meeting. The Spitfire could turn in a tighter circle, than the Messerschmitt, the fighter, the ME-109 or BF-109. But
German plane.
the Messerschmitt could go higher. So therefore, if the German pilot saw them coming, they just go up there at a higher kind of ceiling, and they just kind of remind you, crows, buzzards, Spitfires, Messerschmitts. You can see the connection; it's obvious.
Talking a few weeks back about Nature's Gift as well, there is a squirrel that I think I may have made friends with. He runs. There's cables that run along, because out where they live, it's not kind of everything's on the ground. Everything comes in via overhead cables, and he comes out of his oak tree. He wanders along this cable. He'll come down the cable, and he'll just sit on the patio, and he'll just watch you whilst we're sat there on a bench eating our lunch. And I've had some peanuts the last couple of days that I've been having for my lunch, and I've just thrown him a couple. So I think I've made friends with a squirrel this week as well.
But incidentally, we've also got one of the videos for next week's already in the can. It's done and dusted, and it's got one of my favourite squirrels in it.
It's not Scrat, is it?
No, I'm not telling you any more than that, but it's in the can, done and dusted.
I also found out
there will be a proper brand spanking new video next week with editing and music.
Well, I also found out as well that when you're planting, so if say you've gone to a garden centre and you've got, I really fancy buying some lavender, or I really fancy going out and I'm going to buy some lupins. When you plant these, so say you've bought like a bulk set amount of these, when you plant them, you're meant to put them a minimum of a foot away in odd numbers. So if you're going to plant like a set amount in an area, plant quite bulk, you're meant to plant them a foot apart so they've got enough room to breathe and room to grow. And if you put them in odd numbers, it's aesthetically pleasing and looks much nicer when they grow through, and it doesn't look too uniform.
Definitely.
And the people I've been working for as well, because they're very heavy gardeners. They openly admit they don't know everything, but they want to learn everything. They've both been retired since they were in their 50s, and they basically just spend every day. We're out working in the garden, and they're out working in the garden as well. They have got a fantastic Acer. It's in a pot, and it's about 8 foot high, this Acer. And I said, how on earth did you get it this big? And they went, well, we bought it when it was only kind of about this size. And when we planted it, because the soil around there is the best soil I've ever dug throughout my years of landscaping, it's so nice soil, it just drains water like no one's business. They said trying to retain water in their soil has been such a nightmare since they've lived there that what they started doing was they'd put a plant in, like the Acer, they would plant it, and they would put another plant pot either side of it. And I said, well, what I asked them about it, I was like, well, what's the reasoning behind doing that? And they said, if you fill up these 2 plant pots either side with water, one on the high, if it's on like a slope, one on the higher end, one on the lower end, then the water will contains that the right word? Will stay there for longer, and the plant can use it, because if they just put the water around the plant, it would just drain away too quickly. So if you've got really good soil in your garden that drains very quickly and you want to grow stuff, maybe try putting some plant pots around it, because I found out the other day and I thought that was pretty cool.
Definitely. we were at a garden centre a little while ago. Acers are pretty expensive. There was one kind of about 2 foot tall, and it was 60 quid. Wow. Well, I was at a client meeting. In fact, it's the same one who got distracted with the Spitfire just now. And they've got an Acer that is around about probably a 6 or 7 foot tall, which has got to be moved because it just doesn't fit where it is with the design. And you know what garden designers are like? They're a fickety, fiddly bunch. So we've got to move this Acer, and apparently this has actually been kind of valued. If you bought this one, it's about £2,000 worth of Acer. So we've got to try and be a bit careful. Well, I haven't got to be careful with it. I've just planned its movement. Somebody else will be doing that bit. But yeah, it's quite amazing. I mean, some mature plants are extremely valuable. Kind of think, I've got 4. I inherited 4 from my mother, and only 2 of them have made it.
And the other thing I also found out as well, which maybe it's not quite a hack, but it's a little cheap way. If you've got the time and you've got the facilities to look after them, have a look at buying everything from seeds and growing them up and nurturing them from a seed. Because the people we're working for, they went out the other day to, I can't remember, it's this garden centre up in near Sevenoaks. And they're very avid. They'll go out every weekend to a different garden centre around Kent and other areas, and they'll go to gardens, open gardens, things like that. And they said they went out to this garden centre in Sevenoaks, and they were selling lupins. They were only about a foot tall, apparently, and they were selling them for £25 a pop.
Well, we didn't pay that much for ours because we've just got some.
But what they did instead was they found a bag of lupin seeds, £2.50. There's 75 seeds in there. So if they get a third of their seeds, then they've still made a massive profit.
So you just got to have the time and the enthusiasm to do it.
And the facilities you need. I mean, they have a very big greenhouse. Is also their tumble dryer as well, and they just basically plant and nurture everything in there. And then when the time's right, they'll bring it out and they'll plant it in one area. They have a kind of area of their garden at the front, which we built about a month ago now, where they grow everything up to a certain point, and they've got in their garden, not that you can actually tell until they point it out, their garden's divided into stages. So as things mature and get older and grow in size, they move around the garden. So when you look around, you can actually see this kind of like little slope in the garden where they're trying to hide certain areas because they've got a hideous brick wall, which they've put all these acers and everything in front of to hide. And that's the kind of final stage. So everything that's been grown up goes in there when something has died or something needs to come out or is going to a different home. So they just go around the garden. And it's just fantastic to see, because if I don't grow old and end up like that, I don't want to grow old.
Well, talking of growing old, I think we need to get this next video on, mate.
I think we do as well.
Indeed. I mean, one of the things that we do quite often here is we'll buy the smaller plants, and then in the yard, we'll actually let them come on, because it's a bit of a jungle in our garden, especially at the moment, because everything has gone kind of bonkers. So it gives them a chance to get cracking before they actually then get transported down the garden, and they then have to kind of make their way through the chaos that's down there, especially one of the plants, which we'll talk about next week. So,
yeah, White Horse Wood.
White Horse Wood 3. This is the bit with the yew tree. Remember last time we got a bit carried away with bows and arrows and
whatever else
stuff. So yes,
enjoy.
So we've just finished lunch. We're halfway up the hill before we join the North Downs Way proper once again, but this is a fantastic place to stop. Look at this fence. I love the metal posts and the metal rails, which means it will stand for ages, but the way that they put traditional fencing and attach that to it is superb. You don't want to fall down here because there is quite a drop, but as well as just standing here and taking in the view and the feeling, the hazel catkins and the planting, if you actually look to my right, there is a fantastic view. Once you get over the catkins, the bud there, there's an oak tree. Just take a breath of that Kent countryside.
As the modern country fence goes back down the hill with that footpath, you want to continue up the hill and go to the peak.
So we're continuing up the hill, and we've come into this quite large strand of yew trees, and it's got dark. They're kind of evergreen, and the yew needles are there all the entire time, but it's kind of noticeably gloomy. It's funny, the yew is possibly one of the trees that's really shaped English history, and the reason for that is that they make longbows out of them. Well, they used to make longbows out of them back in the day, and that's because the heartwood has got a very different elasticity to the main bulk of a branch, so it makes a really, really good springing motion. Now, the longbow was invented by the English and used to great effect at the battles of Agincourt and Crécy. In fact, it was the longbow that won both of those battles because of the distance. They could actually shoot arrows. They actually took out most of the French soldiers before they even got close enough to begin hand-to-hand battle. That's pretty awesome. But quite often, yew trees can last for many hundreds of years, sometimes even thousands. That's unreal. So next time you see a yew, stop, go up to it, say hello, say thank you, put your hand on its trunk and celebrate its magnificence, because without them our world would probably be very different. So when you reach the top of the hill, turn right, continue along the North Downs Way.
Now, once you've walked down the path, you'll get to this junction. Now, you want to avoid going right and following the North Downs Way. You're coming off it again and you're going left. I will tell you a little bit about the North Downs Way. Now, we did the North Downs Way. It was our second walk. We'd finished the West Highland Way a year before, and we thought we were going to walk it in the same way as we'd done the West Highland Way, which was the packs, and we were going to walk it in one big hit on day stretches. But what we discovered 3 days in is you cannot do that. It is not geared up and is not as popular as the West Highland Way, South Downs Way and Hadrian's Wall to walk it in such a way. What we did is we did 3 days and we found out it was way too hard. So what we ended up doing was calling it there, and we ended up doing the walk in day sections. So we would park the car at one end, get a taxi to the other and walk back to the car. Or we would park the car at one end and we would get a lift and be picked up at either end. But what we struggled with was that on the walk there is just nowhere to stop realistically. If you are going to walk this walk, you've got to be able to give yourself a mile or two at the end of each day, because you've got to get to the nearest town, the nearest village, also just a place to stay, because it's very hard to get fresh water, food, and get to anywhere to lodge for the night on this walk. It is a lot trickier, so we would recommend doing this as kind of Sunday walking and do it in stints. Once you come up the track, take the road and turn right.
When you reach the junction, take the right turn.
There are some areas which have been put in place on the edges of roads. This one's been put in by the Kent Wildlife Trust. It's just a small area when you come off the main road to come and sit down. But a lot of people have used it to just come along and have left their rubbish when there's a bin right by it. So if you are at these places, just take a couple of minutes, and if there's any litter lying around, just pick it up and put it in the bin. Once you get onto the A-rows, follow the footpath on the right, go down, and then you'll be crossing the road very shortly. Once you've come about 50 metres down the road, cross over and follow the footpath. Once you come across the stile, retrace your steps to the right and it'll take you back up to the car park.
As you come back along the track, you'll pass this kissing gate. You can go through the kissing gate back into Whitehorse Country Park, or alternatively you can retrace the route we came out on and go back down the steps that you can possibly just about see behind me. So we're actually in Whitehorse Country Park now, and it's quite noticeable that there's lots of young trees here. There's silver birch, there's oak, there's buckthorn, there's hawthorn, to name a few. But what really stands out is just how quickly the clematis has actually grown over everything. And it's in terms of clematis, it's the one that we know and love as old man's beard, all those tufty fronds of seed heads. But what's really cool about it is that, unlike ivy, which will, if you like, cover things, almost strangle them, sap them of their life and their energy in some ways, the clematis is just a weight. It just climbs up and uses other trees to allow it to climb the heights. But it kind of looks beautiful. Love it.
Now, if you didn't know this is a man-made wood, you can see from behind me they've all been planted in a line. Within that line you've got maple, silver birch and acacia, amongst many others.
So, we're back at the car park, Whitehorse Country Park. It's an amazing place to actually sit and have a picnic. Or as in Scruffy's case, sit on the table. I'm sure you're supposed to do that really, but there you go. Anyway, we'll see you soon.
Utterly brilliant link, because we wanted to talk a little bit about some of the walks that are coming up, and the September walk, I can't remember the exact date, but the September walk, which is the members walk, is actually, we're going to do the Whitehorse Wood walk, which is so pretty cool for people on the other side. But we just wanted to flag up, we have got the walk at Dode Church on a week Sunday the 20th. It would be fantastic to see some of you there, if at all possible. We've got the other members walk on the 10th of July. Again, we just need to know that you're coming to either of those, because obviously they are totally part of your membership, and you can come along with a packed lunch, and we'll just have a really cool day out and catch up and get to know each other. But say, if you can let us know, that would be fantastic. We've got on, I think it's the 19th of July, the walk at Oxney Church. There's already some tickets sold for that, so that one will definitely be going ahead. But you know, please get involved with these. I've also got the one on June the 27th with Bronwyn Rich from This Way Up Wellbeing, Wellness in the Woods, Discover and Recover. And I'm really excited about that as well. Bronwyn is unique. She's she's a lovely, lovely lady, and I'm really excited about that one. And I'm really excited to see how Bronwyn works and operates, because we've had great fun planning the day, and it would be great fun to have some of you come onto that. Obviously, you get your reduced cost as part of members with those as well. But yeah, please come on. And even if you can't, have a think, who could you possibly encourage to come on those? There's a video going out tomorrow. It's got some people who come on the walks with on the philosophy of why should you go on one of the walks, and they're going to tell you. So if you can find those and share it, that would be fantastic.
But it's not just a walk; it's an experience.
Yeah,
you get to go out and you get to look at things in a different light that you may not necessarily look at it when you're out on a Sunday stroll by yourself. There's a lot of things out there that naturally you wouldn't pick up on without coming to one of these experiences. So
we'd
love to see some of you there.
No, you're right. Actually, we rarely actually use the word walk. They are very much an experience. We look at the way that we react with the world, how we connect to it, and how we possibly have forgotten a lot of the things that we've learned. We've updated the walk a little bit from last year. So yeah, bring on to those. So we just need to quickly recap where we're going. As I say, one of the reasons why we've had a bit of a kind of recap show today is because we're moving to YouTube. We're changing the way that we work and the way that we run. The YouTube channel exists, but we've had 1 or 2 technical difficulties actually getting our videos together, but we've now got 5 that will go on there. We've completely re-edited the Hardwick sheep video from Coniston, and we've been taking excerpts of bits and pieces out of past shows so that they exist. So I'm hoping that within the next week or so, we'll have that launched, and then we can start asking people to go in and subscribe to it. So Ross is off on a jolly this weekend, and why on earth not? So that it won't happen until at some point next week, but that's coming. We've got another 2 shows in the current format. Next week, we're going to do a kind of seed dispersal special. We're going to be looking at the different ways that different plants actually get their seeds into different places, and we're going to have some of the examples of those plants that are there. So we will be putting a little bit more effort into next week's show. We always put effort in, but it will be more visible. So that one's going to be really cool. And we've also got, as I said earlier, there's one video in the can. Remember earlier this year, we did a kind of tour of our garden. Well, the change is absolutely dramatic. So we've done a kind of another one, which we can sort of show as to how that's come on. So that would be really cool. And then on the last of our kind of regular weekly shows on the 24th, we've got Phil Eden, who's coming to talk to us. Phil is the kind of man in charge, or the guru, or the knowledgeable fella all around the Western Heights in Dover. He's a really, really keen, enthusiastic history buff. He's another one who's got TV credentials and radio credentials. He's the go-to person for that area, and I had a chat with him yesterday, and he will be with us on the 24th. So that is really, really cool. And then after that, as we say, we're going to be broadcasting on the 3rd Thursday of the month. And I think from the chat, checking the chat from last week, we're going to be running for 2 hours on the 3rd Thursday of the month from 7:30. And that will almost definitely be on YouTube. It's possible we may end up having to do a little bit with Zoom, but the plan is to get onto YouTube. You'll still be getting, obviously, Ross is going to be doing a fortnightly email newsletter, so that at the minimum, you'll be getting that come through on a fortnightly basis. That will have reminders for the show and other various bits of content. And obviously, we'll still be trying to push people and encourage people to come and join us through social media. We're bringing the social media in-house. So that will be me and Ross. But ultimately, it's still going to be a case of if you can spread the word, anyone you can encourage, that would be really, really cool. Everything else will stay the same. And so we just hope that you all continue to stay on this journey with us. But say that show will still have guests from time to time. It will still have walk features from time to time. It will still have visits to places. It will still have plant animal of the week, some dawn stories. And if there's things that you really like us to go ahead and cover, then we're still going to be more than happy to do so. And if numbers really do ramp up, then we'll look at changing things again. But yeah, I actually mean, I'm quite excited about changes in the way that we're going to go. So that's cool.
Just a quick question. Will there be a chance for interactivity on YouTube like the quizzes? On YouTube, I haven't looked fully into how all of it works yet, but I know that there is still a chat feature on YouTube. There won't be like it is on Zoom where you can see everyone that's there in a grid format. A lot of it is solely, it will be us on a screen, and there will still be a chat feature you can use. So if we do quizzes, maybe do a summer quiz or another Christmas quiz, everything to do with that, there's still the option to ask questions in the chat, and I'll be monitoring it and keeping on top of it as I always have been on Zoom.
So again, Ross is the expert on YouTube. It's something I've kind of like posted stuff on, but as far as we can tell, it's the kind of it's the way to go. It's the way the world's going. And I mean, just little things like being able to watch this on your telly. That is going to be a big bonus. I think the world's getting zoomed out. I'm getting zoomed out.
I'm zoomed out.
I had a 2-hour Zoom last evening, and I had to go and sit in the office and watch it, or get the laptop out and set everything up. And if I could have just put it straight on the TV, I'd have been far more enthusiastic. And come to that, I can't actually remember, except for Death in Paradise, the last time I actually watched anything that was actually broadcast on the telly. So
Death in Paradise was good though.
Death in Paradise was extremely good. So anyway, if you've got any questions about any of that, I think all of you know how to get in touch with us. You've all got our numbers, emails, and everything else. But it's going to be nice for us. It's a different way of doing it, and it's a way of actually managing our time and what we can actually do. So thank you.
Well, we hope you've enjoyed yourselves this evening. A little bit of a different show as such, because we've just spent a little bit of time looking back over some of the footage we've filmed and how the quality of those videos has come on, as well as a little bit about the gardens the garden that I've been working in, what I've seen, what I've learned, and what I've come and told all of you. So I hope you've all enjoyed it, and I'll just pass over to Dad, who appears to be going to read us a bedtime story by the looks of it.
A little bit. It's funny. I was having a chat with Anna Louise. I don't know if anybody actually tuned in on Sunday. The playback's on the internet, but I was talking about the way that when you're in the countryside, how can you possibly be lonely in a world with so much life?
That's Anna Lee's Radio Kent.
Radio Kent, yes.
Radio Kent.
Radio Kent. Because everything that's out there, everything that is out there is a life. Everything has a heartbeat. Sometimes it's so slow we have a difficulty perceiving it. Everything out there makes decisions in some form or another, and when you're properly connected, or at least you hope you're connected to that world, and you take on board the peace and the calm that you get when you're, I've actually managed to get out for a couple of hours this afternoon, and it was delicious. But also, having sat down and calm, it may help things, issues and concerns go away. I remembered one or two things I've forgotten, which was an absolute bonus, and I addressed those. But to just sit outside and find some calm within that world, and just reflect on the gifts that you get. And there's a lovely poem by a fellow called Saint John of the Cross. He was a 16th century mystic, called "A Rabbit Noticed My Condition." It's a lovely, lovely little poem. I was sad one day and went for a walk. I sat in a field. A rabbit noticed my condition and came near. It often does not take much more than that to help at times. To just be close to creatures who are so full of knowing and so full of love that they don't chat. They just gaze with that marvelous understanding. How beautiful is that? Thank you.